At last count, there were more than 200 different IRS forms you could use for filing your income tax. And there are probably an equal number of personal finance software packages on the market. Are they any good, and which ones are the best? And do you really need a computer to balance your checkbook? We'll find out next as we take a look at personal finance software on the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is brought to you in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Popular Computing, the magazine that gives readers an understanding of the technology and applications of microcomputers and software in office, home, and classroom.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stewart Cheifet, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, this mess of papers in front of me is in fact the way most people handle their personal finances, with check stubs and bills thrown all over the place, a real mess. Some people say that the management of personal finances is in fact what will drive everybody to eventually buy a personal computer. And of course, number crunching is what got computers started at the business level. Do you think a personal computer is really the way to solve all these problems?
Well, computing and business happen out of necessity, just too much data to process, and that's not always the case at home, of course. Now, personal financial management can provide order to your finances, obviously, to help you make sound business decisions, help when the tax man comes. But I guess what it really comes down to in many cases, if you want another reason to buy a computer, well, financial management can be one of those reasons.
Okay, we're going to take a look at personal finance software, home banking via computer. We'll take a look at tax preparation software, and we'll hear what the IRS has to say about all of this stuff. Now, of course, when it comes to taxes, the biggest user of computers of all is the Internal Revenue Service. And here's a look inside the IRS computers.
Last year, the IRS received over 170 million tax returns and collected almost $630 billion. To help with the monumental task of sorting, checking, and recording all of those returns, the service began automating its collection system as early as 1964. In a procedure called the pipeline, information from paper returns is converted to digital form almost immediately, either by human transcription or directly through an optical scanner. Operators are alerted to errors as the data is being uploaded. While tax examiners still check the accuracy of individual returns, the final record of tax information is stored on magnetic tape. Today, 20 years later, the IRS is undergoing a new phase of automation with new equipment that can match documents like W-2 and 1099 forms to individual taxpayers, and will even dun delinquent accounts by telephone, automatically redialing numbers every 15 minutes until someone answers. The computerization of the tax collector didn't come easily. While the IRS was far ahead of other government agencies in the 1960s, Congress put a hold on total automation, fearing the spread of Big Brother-style information banks. But the IRS won out and now boasts data transfer over dedicated lines and extensive electronic communication between regional offices. As for the future, don't expect robots to conduct your audit, but you will see field auditors that can unearth a questionable deduction, calculate the new tax and the interest, and do it all, of course, on their portable computers.
Joining us now is John Reese. John is president of Monogram, makers of dollars and cents, and next to John is Kevin Randolph, vice president of home banking at the Bank of America. Gary.
Stewart, I'm going to start with a real simple question for John. I'm not really very familiar with what's going on in financial software. So could you give us a little bit of an idea of what the range of software is available for a consumer now?
Sure, Gary. It's a very broadly attacked marketplace right now. There's probably about 40 products that are going after this category. We're currently at the head of the pack, but it takes work to stay there. We've sold well over 100,000 units of the product. The range of products is an interesting thing. It goes from simple check register replacement products all the way up to very, very richly featured products.
And what's sort of the top-end applications?
Top end would include the basic record-keeping activity, augmented by things like tax planning, tax preparation, stock portfolio management, real estate, income property management.
So we're talking
and the like.
about software that really is very competitive with would be on, say, a mainframe computer system available to a consultant.
Some of the
in many
functions,
cases.
it's more consumer-oriented, but absolutely, very powerful software.
What does dollars and cents do?
We try to go after the upscale household who's got more than a small set of financial activities that he's got to control. Basically, what we do is we set up a set of accounts that you customize for your needs, and you use those to enter transactions, which is a recording checking account activity and credit card transactions.
Can you show us how this works?
Sure. If you look at the defining accounts section, basically what that does is it gives you the ability to list accounts and put in budgets if you're so inclined. And then basically those accounts come in different categories. I'm going to just very quickly run through and exit this so I can go show you other parts of the program. I'm not going to store the data. I didn't make any changes, obviously.
So this is our main menu here.
That
from
was
which
main
you
menu.
branch
You
out.
first do the define accounts, then you do entering transactions, which is the pain. That's the part that's the most difficult. We've made that as simple as possible, basically by saying, for example, here's a set that's predefined. The Fred and Mary household do their transactions once a month. All they do is change the checking amount, the checking data, the check data, and go for it. I'm going to quit this as well rather than show that, just so...
Okay, suppose we want to see a month at a glance or a year review or something like that.
Okay, so let's say you want to do a transaction report. You say what you want to look at, and it'll show you the details of any specific transaction. You say what account you want. In our case, let's say it's a personal checking account, and you just say proceed, and it'll show you all of the data that it has on that. It gives you income statements, cash flow analysis, and the like, as well as graphs. See, now what I did was I was going to show you the detail capability that it's got. Exiting that, back to
You have
the
a
main
way
menu.
of showing some, say, graphic representation
Sure.
of what you're...
Let's go do that.
Okay.
You'll notice that the speed of going from one mode of operation to another is pretty fast. Let's say I want to look at a category which is all of my expenses. This will give me a graph comparing my budgeted amounts of data for each category to my actual expenditures. This gives you the high-level visibility. I pressed a different key than I thought I was going to press.
Well, it's still a nice graph.
It shows you the kind of graphs. Okay. As the one you were talking about is this one here.
Okay.
Okay, and this is showing us what, John?
This shows budgeted versus actual expenses based upon the categories that are important for you to look at. You set up what categories you want to look at.
John, one of the difficulties it seems that people might have in a home is actually transferring, say, the numbers on their checks to data entry, the data entry problem, transferring the numbers of the checks into the machine and doing that consistently and orderly. Do you find that there's any particular difficulty with getting consumers to do that?
Not our consumer audience today, but if you want to try to get the mass audience to get past the top echelon, clearly what we want to do is facilitate their ability to enter that data.
Right. Now, this sort of gets into another area that's closer to Kevin's a particular business. And Kevin, you have a product that automates, I guess, the banking system through a central facility.
Yes, we do. Product's called Home Banking. We've been in business for about a year now. We can pay bills and transfer funds, do a balance inquiry, essentially all the functions that you can do through an ATM with the exception of paying bills. But you can also do electronic mail and also look up your electronic statements and find on a 2-day lag what your current cash position is.
Okay, so you don't have a software package. This is a B of A service to a customer.
Yes.
Would you show us how you would use home banking here and pay a bill?
Sure. I'm here on the main menu now, and so I just enter in the pay bills function. Stewart's been kind enough to let us use his account, so we'll see what payees he has.
See all the people I owe money to. Okay, so you can call up the payees and pick a payee, and then go ahead and actually pay the bill on your home terminal.
Sure.
And
So
show us how you would do that, or whatever else you can do there.
you have Pacific Bell. So what I'll do here is predate one of your transactions so that your charge doesn't actually occur, and then I can go in and cancel that transaction up until 3 o'clock of the day in which the transaction is scheduled.
Okay, it seems to me, Kevin, the success of this is then your bank's deal with the payees. How do you work that out? I mean, I can only pay the people who you have gotten to agree to accept this?
We have what's called a closed NP list. That means that we require the customer to present us with the payees that he would like to have on the service, and then we check with both the payee and the customer to verify all the account information. We want to be very sure that we aren't allowing people to set up people who shouldn't be payees.
Now,
it's a security feature we've built in.
Yeah, and understand that. Is this an electronic transfer of funds then from this account, say, to a payee, or do you actually write a check that's transferred through the mail? How does that operation actually take place? Well, in the transfer of funds themselves, are you actually going to a complete electronic transfer of funds from, let's say, Stewart's account to a payee without any paperwork actually involved in it?
We have 4 methods of data transmission. We enter both direct data transmission, where we update both the payables and receivable journals of the payee. We send tapes of the transactions to the payees, and then back those up with paper journals of the payments. And we also send checks and then send a list of those payments as well. For example, last month we processed about 48,000 payments. The majority were check and list payments, about 33,000.
Now, one of the things that seems that would be very nice here is to have a connection somehow, an upload and download facility between, say, your service and then the dollars and cents program. Is there anything going on in that area?
Sounds like a very good idea.
But that's not
there yet.
Okay.
Kevin, one final question. One concern people have with this, like I would have, somebody can get into my account and spend my money somewhere. How do you handle the security problem there?
As I was mentioning before, we have a closed NP list so that the customer could spend your money, but the worst he can do is to pay your bills.
My bills. Okay, no problem.
Between your accounts.
No problem. Okay, in just a minute, we're going to take a look at Tax Preparer from Howard Soft, and we'll hear what the IRS has to say about using computers to pay your taxes. So stay with us. Joining us now is Jim Howard. Jim is president of Howard Soft, makers of Tax Preparer. And next to Jim is Jay Levine, manager of Computer Assisted Tax Services at Pricewaterhouse in New York. Gary.
Tax preparation, I guess, is really one form of financial management in the home. And Jim's program, Tax Preparer, I think would be a real good example of just what such a program would do. Can you show us how that works?
Sure. Basically, what our program does is automate the entire tax preparation process. What's shown on the screen here is a facsimile of a 1040, which should be familiar to everybody. Line 7 for wages, line 8 for interest. When you get your W-2, all you do is go to the computer, copy all the information from your W-2. When you get 1099s from banks telling the interest you've received, you go to the computer, enter that information. When you escape out, all of those numbers get put on the 1040 and recalculate the 1040 and all associated forms automatically. Then you print them out, send them to your IRS.
Now, Jim, a lot of people think the hard work you still have to do, even when you have something like Tax Preparer. How much work does this really save you?
Well, you still have to type in all the numbers. So
collect all the receipts.
That's collect all the receipts. One thing it does help, though, is it helps you organize your taxes throughout the year, in that if you're disciplined about it and enter the information monthly, for example, then by the time April 15th comes in, you just push the button and it's ready.
Isn't one of your competitors would be the I guess the tax preparation services, because they have a certain cost associated with them, and if the cost of your program is higher than the service, it seems like you'd have a problem there.
That's right, and actually a lot of the tax preparation services are getting into the tax software business because of that.
What about changes in? Sorry,
that was my question. Go ahead.
What about the changes that go from year to year? How do you have to reprogram all of the come up with a new version of your program?
We
each
sure
year?
do, and in fact we offer low-cost updates to existing users. Typically, and I think this is typical of the industry, we charge about 1/4 of the retail price of the product for an update, which in our case gives them a brand new program disk and a brand new manual.
What does that price actually amount to?
The price of the package itself is $295 and the update is $95.
Okay, Jay, let's turn to you now as a professional tax preparer with Pricewaterhouse. What do you think about products like this?
Well, it's clear that the tax preparation professional has got to use the computer to prepare returns. Tax professionals have been using it since the 60s, mostly in service bureaus. Over the past few years, things have migrated to the microcomputer. Many of our clients have asked us about doing their own returns on their own personal computer. Because of the sophistication of a Pricewaterhouse type client, most of the packages currently available can't handle every element of it. There are always ways around the program to make it compute the taxes correctly. But we see, in conjunction with other elements where they can do a lot of their preliminary work, record keeping on the computer, use it in conjunction. They send us then diskettes, and we can use it to prepare the returns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't have potential clients really calling up saying, I'm not going to use you this year, I just bought Tax Preparer.
No, Price Waterhouse wouldn't have it, or any of the other national accounting firms. But I can see some of the smaller preparers having potential problems with that. The key thing to remember with any tax preparation program is that you still have to make a lot of tax decisions yourself. The computer will help you in terms of organize your information, but you must put the right information in. Computer can't make a decision whether something is deductible or not.
Right. Now, Jim, I think one of the advantages of your program apparently is that you can actually change the data and see what the resulting tax would be. It's sort of like a spreadsheet in a sense.
Well, you can do it for tax planning is essentially what that is. At year end, see what the effects really are as you go along.
Jim, and you said there's some tax law in there. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, there are several tax regulations in there. For example, if you tried to deduct more than half of your adjusted gross income, it'll automatically limit it back to half your adjusted gross income.
Okay, well, one of the most complicated things in doing your taxes is handling your investments and credits and capital gains and so on, assuming you have gains. Well, there's also computer software around to make sure you do get gains from your investments, and Wendy Woods takes a look at that.
Anybody who invests in the stock market knows it's a jungle out there, and it's easy to get overwhelmed just by the amount of financial data generated every day. But for a growing number of brave souls, there's now software that sums up all the monthly activities of the stock market. San Francisco writer and lecturer Saul Feldman reviews a lot of these packages and has found something called StockBack 2 from Standard & Poor's to be the best tool for the armchair investor. On diskettes sent monthly, there's performance data for 4,500 stocks. Using selection criteria, you can determine what the best stock is for your needs.
They're doing a lot of the work for me, and a lot of the work that I could not have done, or this could never have been done 20 years ago. Even on a mainframe, it would have been unheard of. And now the fact that I can do it in my own home with a small Apple computer is truly amazing to me.
While the proper software package can eliminate the tedium of doing spreadsheets and financial analysis, using software instead of a broker can have its drawbacks.
Time. It takes a lot of time. And if you don't have the time, then you shouldn't be doing it. You have to be vigilant, you have to keep up to date, you have to do a lot of reading. You just cannot do the software itself. You have to have a good sense of what's going on in the world around you and in the market.
Oh yes, and by the way, Saul says he's actually made money using these investment tools, money which has more than paid for the price of the software. But don't bother asking which stocks. Saul won't tell. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
Stewart, the only problem with these programs that help you make money is they have to pay some of it back to the government when you're through.
Speaking of which, Gary, joining us now is Ellen Ramsey. Ellen is Chief of Office Automation for the Internal Revenue Service here in San Francisco. Ellen, the first thing I want to ask you is, what does the IRS think about this trend of using computer software to prepare tax returns?
IRS actually views it very positively. One of the greatest mistakes that taxpayers make is in a miscalculation of their tax return. And using a computer will at least eliminate some of the addition and subtraction mistakes that occur quite frequently.
In a sense, these programs could be a little bit competitive with the IRS, especially if they tend to minimize the amount of tax you're paying. So,
if they do help you calculate your tax more correctly, it would still be looked upon positively.
Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, what about the cost of the program? That if you buy a tax preparation program, is that something that's deductible?
That is deductible if it is a program like Tax Preparer, which is developed specifically for preparing your taxes. If you use a larger forecasting type of package or a spreadsheet package, that would be deductible only if you were using it for a business.
I see.
Any warnings for people who go to personal computer software to do their tax returns? I mean, do they rely on them too much in some way that could be risky?
That could be a possibility, that you think that anything that is generated by a computer is done correctly. The computer will not catch your mistakes. If you leave out a decimal point when you're entering a figure or don't put in the information correctly from your W-2 or your 1099, you would still have an error and the computer would not catch that.
Now, what about electronic filing of tax returns? Can we get to the stage where we can eliminate these forms altogether?
They are looking into that. They are running a test right now, as a matter of fact, that will allow a tax preparer to directly input someone's tax return into the system. The only problems that we're running into in terms of using that in the home is how they would work out a signature. How would you actually sign your return or verify that you did agree with everything that was on the return and it was yours?
But if that sort of a system could be implemented, it would save the government a tremendous
lot
amount
of money, right.
Data entry. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What about right now in terms of when we saw Jim's demonstration just before of Tax Preparer, where the computer generates its own forms? Can you send in the forms that come out of the printer instead of an IRS official form?
You can if it is an approved form. There are several that we have approved. There are some specific indentations on the 1040 form that help us in the service center to actually process the tax return, but we will accept computer-generated forms.
How do you know if a form is approved? Is there some sort of a statement that appears on the package?
I am not sure of that. I know that the people who develop the package can go to the IRS and can request that their form be approved. I would hope there would be something on the packages.
Jay, from a professional tax preparer's point of view, is there software that's being developed at your end for your more sophisticated kinds of clients?
Well, most of the major service bureaus that we have used, as well as all the other accounting firms, have realized the things are going to the micros and have gone and changed their programs, specifically in the area of individual returns, to make them micro-based. Also, with the reduced cost of laser printers over the past few years, we're seeing this year, we expect to produce probably 20 to 30% of our individual returns completely in-house using a laser printer, which prints the entire form, and it's an exact duplicate of the government form, so we don't have to worry about any of the problems that Ellen was talking about.
Well, they say that's the one thing that never changes is taxes, but the way you do your taxes apparently does change. Well, you've got to make your own personal decision as to whether you want to use a personal computer to pay your taxes or to manage your personal finances. But our commentator, Paul Schindler, thinks this stuff is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
You know, a lot of you are probably wondering what the heck a home computer is good for. Well, I can tell you one thing, this checkbook never balanced properly in the decade before I got a computer at home, and it's never failed to balance in the 4 years since. Frankly, if the home computer revolution is ever going to take hold, it's going to be on the back of personal finance packages. These puppies take two of the most painful tasks performed in most homes, checkbook balancing and tax form preparation, and make them almost fun. The way I see it, word processing, the most popular office use for computers, will get into homes like mine, where there's a professional writer, but not all of us write for a living. On the other hand, all of us do have personal finances, and most of our personal finances aren't very well controlled or understood. Personal computers could help all of us make and keep budgets, and let's face it, we can't do much worse than the federal government in that regard. As for understanding finances, well, let me ask you this. Do you know your net worth? I don't know mine yet, but by this time next week when I get all the data entered, I will. So 3 cheers for personal finance. That's my opinion. I'm Paul Schindler.
In the Random Access file this week, K-Pro has come out with the first clone of the IBM PC-AT. The K-Pro machine, called the 286i, will feature two 1.2 megabyte hard disk drives and 512K of RAM. The price will be about 20% less than the current cost of the IBM PC-AT. The K-Pro 286i will also reportedly come bundled with MicroPro software, including WordStar. Data General says it will be coming out with a new screen for its Data General 1 Portable. The new screen will be tiltable so as to pick up the best light and will feature several improvements in the basic screen technology. Current owners of DG1s can upgrade the screen for $350. The Europeans have decided on a software standard so as to improve the flow of information technology throughout Europe, and the standard is AT&T's Unix. The decision to go with Unix is seen as a blow to IBM's position in the European market. Last year was a year of falling prices for floppy disk drives. This may be the year that hard disks come into the price range of most computer users. Both Xebec and Western Digital have announced breakthroughs in hard disk design, which they say can bring down hard disk prices by 20 to 60%. Both Xebec and Western Digital are working on 3.5-inch drives, which could be out by this summer. Despite some industry doubts, Atari seems to be moving toward an April introduction of its new ST computer. Atari this week alerted software companies that ST prototypes are available for software developers. The ST could be a powerful competitor to the Macintosh. It reportedly will have the same graphics capability, pop-up menus, icons, and windows, but it will also have color, hard disk capabilities, and a price under $1,000. It's software review time, and here again is Paul Schindler.
Overhead foils, the old way. I mean, this is what overhead foils were supposed to be all about. Quick and dirty graphics. Type them up, presto, presentation. But wouldn't you rather have overheads that look like this? It's the output from a program called the Overhead Express. And it's not just another graphics package, it's the best program I've ever seen for producing fast yet showy overhead slides. What I like best about it are the 14 templates that you can use as a basis for your overheads. I'll show you a few of them. This package includes just about every kind of overhead slide I've ever made or thought of making. Tables, outlines, bullets, plain text. We're talking easy to use here. We're talking comfortable. Just look at a couple of the screens. See this setup? You just type copy and let Overhead Express handle the rest. You can preview what your slide will look like, either condensed, like this, or full-size, like this. The program can also produce an automated slideshow like this revealing template. Believe you me, if you use overhead slides, you need Overhead Express, $195 from Business and Professional Software in Cambridge, Massachusetts. For Random Access, I'm Paul Schindler.
There was a spreadsheet-a-thon in New York last month as 10 teams of MBA students from the Wharton School all tried to solve the same problem using different spreadsheet programs. After the 27-hour marathon, the winning team was the one using Framework. Second was SuperCalc, third was Enable, Lotus came in fourth. The human contestants were quick to point out that the final standings reflected not only the quality of the software, but also the capabilities of the individual contestants. The National Science Foundation has announced a $200 million grant to put supercomputers in 4 major universities. The recipients will be Cornell, Princeton, the University of Illinois, and the University of California at San Diego. A computer researcher at MIT has come up with an implantable silicon chip that is so sensitive it can detect the faint electrical impulse of a single human nerve. The chip could lead to dramatic improvements in artificial limbs and in new techniques for joining severed spinal cords. The chip's developer says that an amputee could be hooked up to a computer and could type on it simply by thinking about it. The people planning the next America's Cup yacht race have been deluged with so many applications to sail that they say it will be impossible to hold the usual round-robin elimination. So the yachtsmen are considering using a computer simulation for the early rounds to eliminate those yachts, which the computer says have a low probability of actually winning. That would save a considerable amount of money. It's estimated that each competing team will have to spend nearly $5 million in the next America's Cup Challenge. That's it for this week's Computer Chronicles. We'll see you next time.
The Computer Chronicles was brought to you in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Popular Computing, the magazine that gives readers an understanding of the technology and applications of microcomputers and software in office, home, and classroom.